Have you ever wondered why, even after the narcissist is gone, their presence lingers like a phantom that refuses to release its grip on your soul? Why the memory of their voice, their gaze, their twisted intimacy continues to echo within you as if a haunting shadow has taken residence in the deepest corners of your being? This is no ordinary memory. It is not just a wound left by betrayal. It is the imprint of a shadow, a psychic mark that Carl Jung himself would have recognized as the residue of archetypal darkness, the shadow a narcissist leaves in the soul of another. For many, the bond formed with a narcissist does not end with their departure. Instead, it seems to intensify, as if absence itself is an accelerant, igniting longing, confusion, and despair. This paradox is the nature of a trauma bond, the cruel tethering of pain to desire, betrayal to yearning. The narcissist's shadow seeps into the psyche not only through words and actions, but through the way they pull you into a dance of light and darkness. They seduce with fragments of admiration and fleeting tenderness, only to strip you bare with contempt, gaslighting, and silence. And yet, even in the midst of cruelty, part of you believes you have glimpsed something divine in them, something worth holding on to. This illusion is how the shadow embeds itself, by convincing you that the torment is proof of a love that must be real. Jung wrote of the shadow as the dark twin of the self, the part we reject yet secretly fear and desire. When entangled with a narcissist, you are not only wrestling with their shadow, but with your own. You are confronted with the hidden hunger for validation, the need to be seen, the ache of old wounds that perhaps began long before this relationship. It is as though the narcissist's shadow enters your own, merging with the fractures of your inner child, weaving itself into your sense of worth. This is why detaching feels like tearing away part of your own skin, because their shadow has convinced you that without it, you are incomplete. But look closer. The narcissist does not love in the way love is meant to nourish. They consume, they hollow, they mirror back to you what they believe you crave, only to steal the light once you begin to trust it. Their affection is never truly given. It is loaned with interest, demanded back with cruelty. In Jungian terms, they embody the devouring shadow, the archetype that thrives on the vitality of others to fill the void they refuse to confront in themselves. And you, unknowingly, become both victim and carrier of their shadow. Have you felt it? The way their absence hurts more than their presence ever did. That paradox is the shadow's residue. It convinces you that you cannot breathe without what once suffocated you. It whispers that healing is betrayal, that freedom is abandonment, that walking away means losing the only love you'll ever know. This is not truth. It is the voice of the shadow speaking through you. And yet, within this haunting lies the first spark of transformation. The shadow a narcissist leaves behind can be seen not only as poison, but also as a brutal invitation. For what does it mean to carry the darkness of another if not to awaken to the hidden chambers of your own soul? Every pang of grief, every echo of longing, every tear shed in solitude is the psyche's way of pointing toward the wound that demands healing. The narcissist may have carved the wound deeper, but the scar was etched long before they arrived. Their shadow simply made it visible. This realization does not come gently. It tears through illusions, dismantles fantasies, and strips away the comforting lie that they were ever your salvation. To see the shadow clearly is to acknowledge that what you loved was not entirely them, but the reflection of something you yearned for in yourself, the promise of being enough, of being cherished, of being safe. This is the cruel genius of the narcissist's shadow. It masquerades as love, when in truth it is only the distorted mirror of your own unmet needs. And yet, if you dare to face this mirror without flinching, a quiet power begins to stir. Because once you recognize that the shadow they left behind is not theirs alone but also yours, you reclaim the ability to transform it. What was once a haunting becomes a signal, What once imprisoned you becomes the key. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming whole by confronting, integrating, and transcending the shadow. It is here, at this threshold, that the pain begins to take on meaning. For while the narcissist's shadow may have entered your soul, it is not eternal. It does not belong to you. It was only ever a spark of darkness passing through. And when seen for what it truly is, it becomes not a curse but the beginning of liberation. The shadow left by the narcissist is not merely a memory of cruelty. It is a labyrinth, a psychic maze where echoes of their voice twist into whispers of your own doubts. The narcissist's manipulation thrives on confusion, on erasing the boundary between what is theirs and what is yours. They gaslight not only to control you in the moment, but to seed a lifelong uncertainty, to leave behind a voice that questions your reality even long after they are gone. This is the enduring sting of their shadow. It implants itself as an inner critic, a phantom judge that wears their face yet speaks in your own mind. Carl Jung spoke of projections as the way in which we cast our unacknowledged aspects onto others, and how others in turn cast theirs upon us. The narcissist is a master of projection. They offload their shame, their rage, their deep sense of inadequacy onto the one who loves them, so that what they cannot bear in themselves becomes a burden you are forced to carry. And if you are sensitive, if you are deeply empathic, you absorb these projections as if they were truth. You begin to feel their darkness as your own, and this is how the shadow burrows in. But here lies the paradox. In taking on what was never yours, you are also handed the raw material for transformation. You are given, in a brutal way, a mirror into what Jung called the narcissistic wound. Not only theirs, but also the echoes of your own. For most who fall into the orbit of a narcissist, the bond is not random. It awakens something ancient within, the wound of the inner child, the longing for love that was unconditional but perhaps never fully given, the yearning for safety in a world that once felt unsafe. The narcissist finds that wound, presses against it, and then claims ownership of it. This is how their shadow lingers. It feeds on the places in you that were never healed. You may wonder why leaving feels like tearing away part of your soul. It is not because they were your soulmate, but because they entwined themselves around your most fragile roots. They became entangled with your very sense of identity, so that separating from them feels like unraveling yourself. This is what Jung meant when he described the shadow as both terrifying and necessary. For until the shadow is faced, it rules from the dark. And in the case of narcissistic entanglement, the shadow rules by making you believe you are powerless, that you are broken, that your worth depends on their recognition. But imagine this. What if the very places they targeted, the vulnerabilities, the open wounds, the hidden sorrows, are not your weakness but your doorway? What if what you thought was evidence of your brokenness is actually the birthplace of your greatest strength? This is where the psychology of the narcissist collides with the archetype of the wounded healer. For the wound they exploit is the same wound that, when faced, transforms into wisdom, and wisdom cannot be taken back by them. Look closely at the narcissist's shadow. What you will see is emptiness masquerading as power. Their grandiosity is only armor for despair. Their cruelty is only a mask for self-loathing. What they leave in your soul is not their strength but their sickness, not their truth but their illusion. And once you perceive this, once you strip the mask away, you will see that their shadow is nothing more than the absence of light. And so the work becomes this: to recognize that the voice inside you that says you are unworthy, unlovable, or lost is not your own voice. It is theirs. It is the shadow they planted. And the moment you can whisper back, "This is not mine," the labyrinth begins to dissolve. Yet the path through this dissolution is not quick. It is not gentle. It demands what Jung called the confrontation with the unconscious, the courage to sit in darkness without fleeing, to listen to the cries of the inner child, to face the mirror without turning away. This is the stage where grief surges, where rage surfaces, where despair feels bottomless. This is the initiation of shadow work, to descend fully, to see without denial, to let the illusions of false love fall apart. And though this descent feels like death, it is in truth the slow rebirth of the self. For every step taken into the shadow is also a step away from the narcissist's hold. Each moment of clarity is a loosening of chains. Each act of naming the wound is an act of reclaiming power. The narcissist may have left their shadow in your soul, but the soul itself is never conquered. It is only obscured. Beneath the rubble of their projections lies a light they could never extinguish, a resilience that does not yield. And though you may not yet feel it, that light is waiting, burning, ready to guide you out of the labyrinth. There comes a point in every soul's journey when the descent cannot be avoided. It is not a gentle fall, but a collapse into darkness so complete that the world seems stripped of meaning. This is what mystics, poets, and Jung himself called the dark night of the soul. For the one who has loved a narcissist, this night often arrives after the final rupture, when the illusion of their love disintegrates and all that remains is the raw ache of emptiness. At first, it feels like annihilation. The silence left in their wake is deafening. What once felt like passion now tastes like poison. The memories replay, each moment blurred with questions. Was it ever real, or was it all a lie? And as the mind wrestles with this unbearable uncertainty, the heart grieves not only the loss of the narcissist, but the loss of a dream, the loss of innocence, the loss of a self that believed in promises that were never kept. The dark night does not simply strip away the narcissist. It strips away every illusion you carried into their arms. It tears down the fantasy of being saved by another, the belief that love can heal unhealed wounds when it is poisoned at its source. This is why the grief feels endless, because what dies here is not only the relationship, but an identity, a way of seeing yourself. You are left staring into the abyss, wondering who you are without the drama, without the push and pull, without the distorted mirror they held up to you. Jung taught that the shadow, once confronted, initiates the descent into the unconscious, a descent that feels like death, but is in truth an initiation. In the dark night, every wound rises to the surface. You feel the abandoned child within, still crying out for safety. You hear the voice of the inner critic, forged in years of neglect or betrayal, repeating the narcissist's words as if they were gospel. You confront the unbearable loneliness that once drove you to accept crumbs of affection from someone who could never truly love. This confrontation is merciless, but it is also sacred, for the soul cannot be reborn until it has first been stripped bare. It is in this abyss that many lose hope, because the narcissist's shadow thrives on despair. It tells you that you will never heal, that you will never love again, that you will always be broken. It whispers that leaving them was a mistake, that no one else will understand you, that you will always be haunted. These are the lies of the shadow, but in the night they feel indistinguishable from truth. And yet, if you can remain in the darkness long enough, if you can resist the urge to flee into distraction or rebound into another illusion, something begins to shift. You notice that in the stillness, a faint voice emerges, not the narcissist's, not the critic S, not the wounded child S. It is quieter, almost imperceptible, but steady. It says, "This pain is not the end. This emptiness is a passage. This grief is the doorway to becoming who you were always meant to be." This is where the archetype of the wounded healer stirs beneath the rubble. For those who have walked through devastation often emerge with a compassion so fierce, a wisdom so piercing, that it becomes their gift to the world. But this gift is not given cheaply. It is earned through fire. The dark night strips you of all you thought you were so that you may discover what you truly are. Think of the myths Jung studied: Persephone descending into the underworld, Inanna stripped naked at the gates, Christ entering the tomb. Each descent is not a punishment but a rite of passage. And you too are in such a passage. The narcissist was never the destination. They were the gatekeeper, the one whose betrayal thrust you into the underworld. And though it feels as if you were abandoned, in truth you were being initiated. The dark night teaches a truth no illusion can survive: that your worth does not depend on another's gaze, that your soul does not die from rejection, that love cannot be found in chains. This knowledge does not arrive in a sudden revelation. It seeps in slowly as you sit with your grief, as you endure the silence, as you begin to notice that even in the abyss you are still here, breathing, enduring, watching the darkness without being consumed. And that is the first sign of transformation. Not joy, not triumph, not yet, but endurance. The simple act of surviving the night proves the shadow has not conquered you, and in that survival, the light begins to flicker. From the silence of the dark night emerges a figure, wounded, yes, but walking. This is the archetype of the wounded healer, born in the ashes of betrayal. In Jungian thought, the wounded healer is not one who has escaped pain, but one who has descended fully into it, who carries the scar as both reminder and source of strength. And for the woman who has survived the shadow of a narcissist, this archetype rises from the depths like a secret inheritance. It begins subtly. You notice that the pain no longer devours you whole. There are moments, however brief, where you feel a flicker of selfhood returning. Perhaps in the stillness of solitude, you hear your own voice more clearly than before. Perhaps in the rhythm of ordinary days, you catch glimpses of a strength you did not know you possessed. Solitude, once unbearable, slowly becomes acre, for it is in solitude that you discover you were never as powerless as they made you believe. The narcissist thrives on dependence, on convincing you that without their presence you are nothing. But solitude dismantles that illusion. It teaches you that you can exist, breathe, and even flourish without their gaze. In fact, it is in their absence that you begin to remember who you were before their shadow entered your life. And what you find is not weakness, but resilience. The very qualities the narcissist exploited: your sensitivity, your compassion, your yearning for depth, become the seeds of transformation when reclaimed on your own terms. The wounded healer archetype does not deny pain. Instead, it embraces it as the forge of wisdom. Your wounds become teachers. The betrayal becomes the mirror that shows you where you once abandoned yourself. The grief becomes the river that carries you toward a deeper truth. That healing is not about erasing scars, but about learning to live with them as symbols of survival. Every scar tells a story, and in telling it, you awaken the power to guide others through their own shadows. Think of how the body heals. When flesh is torn, the wound closes with tissue stronger than before. The scar is not weakness, it is resilience made visible. So too with the psyche. The narcissist may have torn at the fabric of your selfhood, but what grows in its place is stronger, more unyielding. The very attempt to break you becomes the reason you rise unbreakable. And yet this rising does not come without rage. Rage is the fire that burns away the last of the illusions. It is not the uncontrolled fury the narcissist wielded to dominate, but a sacred rage. The righteous refusal to ever again be diminished, silenced, or owned. This rage is not destructive. It is clarifying. It sharpens boundaries, awakens dignity, and fuels the reclamation of your life. It is in this stage that you realize the narcissist was never as powerful as they appeared. Their shadow seemed overwhelming only because you had not yet claimed your own light. And now, as the wounded healer, you stand in a paradox. The very person who wounded you has become the unwilling catalyst of your rebirth. Without intending to, They thrust you into the descent that awakened your strength. They were the storm, but you are the one who learned to walk through lightning and rise again. Carl Jung believed that healing comes not from fleeing the shadow, but from integrating it, recognizing that even the darkest experiences hold fragments of the self waiting to be reclaimed. The narcissist's shadow, once feared, now reveals itself as a teacher. It showed you where your boundaries must be drawn, where your self-worth must be rooted, where your love must be given first and foremost to yourself. The wounded healer walks forward carrying grief in one hand and wisdom in the other. She does not deny what was lost, but she refuses to remain in chains. She understands that solitude is not emptiness but power, and she begins to see that her story, though written in sorrow, is also written in resilience. This is the turning point. No longer defined by the narcissist's shadow, you begin to embody a new archetype. The sovereign woman, the one who walks alone yet feels whole, who carries scars yet shines with strength. The shadow remains, but now it is integrated, transformed into a source of clarity and depth. And from here, the final stage awaits, the rebirth into authentic freedom, the detachment from all illusions, the peace that comes when the shadow no longer defines you. Rebirth rarely announces itself with fanfare. It arrives quietly, almost imperceptibly, like dawn spreading across a bruised horizon. After the long descent, after the silence of solitude and the awakening of the wounded healer, a woman begins to notice something extraordinary. She no longer trembles at the thought of him. The name that once pierced her chest now feels distant, almost irrelevant. The memory that once haunted her nights now drifts like a shadow that no longer clings. This is the final alchemy, the transformation of darkness into light. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming whole, of reclaiming every fragmented part of the self and weaving it into something stronger, more complete. What the narcissist sought to fracture now becomes the foundation of a soul reborn. The trauma bond dissolves, not because the past has been erased, but because its power has been stripped away. There is a profound freedom in no longer needing to rewrite the story. You stop searching for answers in their absence. You stop replaying the endless what-ifs. You stop hoping for the apology that will never come. Instead, you step into a truth deeper than any closure they could offer, that you are whole with or without them, that your worth was never theirs to define, and that healing was always your birthright. The archetype of the sovereign feminine emerges. Here, she is not untouched by sorrow. Her eyes still carry the depth of what she has endured, but she is no longer ruled by it. She walks with calm authority, not because life has spared her pain, but because she has learned that pain is not the end. She does not chase validation, nor does she crave revenge. Her power lies in detachment, in the quiet strength of knowing who she is. In this rebirth, love itself is redefined. No longer is love a desperate grasping at crumbs of affection. No longer is it a hunger that drives her into the arms of those who exploit her. Love becomes something purer, quieter, steadier. It begins within, an embrace of the self once rejected, a protection of the inner child once abandoned, a recognition of the sacredness of simply existing. From this foundation, love given to others flows without fear of loss, because it is no longer rooted in lack but in abundance. Even the narcissist, once the figure of torment, loses significance. He becomes not a ghost, not a wound, but a chapter. His shadow, once suffocating, becomes a reminder of how far she has traveled. There is no need to erase him, for he no longer defines her. In a strange paradox, his attempt to consume her light became the reason she found a fire he could never touch. Rebirth does not promise a life free of pain. Suffering will come again as it comes for all. But the difference is this. She now knows that no shadow, no betrayal, no abandonment can undo her. For she has walked through the abyss and returned with treasure. She has carried grief and found within it a fierce kind of grace. She has confronted her deepest fears and discovered that she is unbreakable. And so the story ends not with vengeance, not with longing, but with sovereignty. A woman who has faced the shadow and emerged whole no longer lives in chains. She chooses with clarity. She loves with freedom. She walks with the calm knowledge that her soul is her own, untouchable, indestructible. The narcissist may have left a shadow in her soul, but she transformed it into light. And now, when she looks into the mirror, she does not see a victim. She sees a survivor, a healer, a sovereign. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.